ahead and start off in your database. Guys, I'm gonna do a bit of bouncing back and forth between my actual database and your actual database. I'm gonna start off there. So I'm gonna go over events. Just to start, this module is going to be very similar to the camper module, but it's not necessarily going to have everything that the camper module has. I just wanted to throw that out in the very beginning. So events was designed for things like family events, one-off events, things like that. But that being said, it can be used for reoccurring events as well. So before I start again, I wanted to go over some of the major differences just so you're aware of how the events module actually operates in comparison to the camper module. So there are a few differences here and there that I'll bring up later on throughout the training, but I just wanted to go over some of the major ones. So first things first, I think I mentioned before that events is a completely separate module, and there are different links that you need to incorporate into your marketing websites, things like that. And I'll get you those later if you don't already have those links. So it acts as a separate database. So there's really no cross-referencing between the camper module and the events module. But the benefit of using events is that it actually allows for individual registration as well as group registration. So it allows for families to enroll as a whole unit versus having to enroll each individual person in the family. So that's a benefit of events. And also there's no parent to camper relationship, so they sign themselves up. So it doesn't ask who the parent is and the contact information. It's just asking who you are, essentially. And also events is not integrated with the medical module here. It's only integrated with the camper module and staff. So you wouldn't be able to have guests and groups in the events module actually fill out the same default medical forms that you created in the medical module. So you can work it in through questions, stuff like that, if you needed to collect any medical information from any of your guests or groups for your events. So those are some of the major differences. And now that I kind of went over that, I'm going to actually jump into how I set up or how you would set up your events in the events module as opposed to in the camper module. So to do that, I'm going to first go to admin. It's going to be in the same place as we went through your setup wizard for campers, but instead of actually going to the campers tab here, we're going to hop over to the events and conference, or just the events tab here. So we're going to have the setup wizard. So it's going to be similar to like the camper setup wizard that we have, but it's going to have a lot less steps. So I'm going to go through each step. So versus the 9 steps in the camper module, there's only 6 steps here. So first things first, I'm going to go over the request for information here. Okay, so in or with the camper or the events module, groups or individuals would be able to fill out the respective form. So if they're signing up as an individual, they would fill out the individual request for information form or new group registration form. So it's going to work the same way. So the request information form is if they're unsure, they don't know if they want to sign up for an event. The new family or new group registration or new individual registration form is going to be more towards individuals or groups or attendees that are ready to sign up for something. So it kind of works the same way. So it crosses over in that aspect. So this is where you'll be able to customize the order of how this information is presented in both those forms. It's going to apply to both the request for information and the direct registration forms for both guests and individuals. So group information, group leader, group address, guest information, guest address. You can rearrange it by just clicking on this little icon. You've seen it before, to just rearrange it. So there's a bit of a lag, but this icon will allow you to drag and drop it in any order that you wish. And then you can make certain fields or sections inactive if you don't want to necessarily collect that information when they first create their account. So this would be what they would fill out to create an account within your events database. And then you can also require the date of birth for group leaders on the group enrollment or request for information and direct registration form here. So you can set that to yes if you wanted to, or if you didn't need it, you can just set it to no. So again, there's going to be 2 forms that they could fill out, the request for information form or the direct registration forms. So there will be respective to groups and individuals depending on who is creating the account. Okay.
Michelle, I have a quick question. So on this required date of birth, do we have the option of just it's saying I am over the age of 18?
Like a age capacity for
yeah, like
signing
I
up?
don't even know someone's date of birth, but I think you know, and I don't even know if it matters. We may not even use it. I'm just wondering about if we just want to confirm that they are, in fact, the age of legal majority.
Oh, I don't think there's a way to set an age restriction for events when creating an account.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a minor, so I'm not concerned.
Okay. Yeah. And then we have header text, which is basically what it sounds like. It's going to be all the text that would be presented on the respective forms. You can customize it here. So the header text for the group request for information forms, so you could put something above there. And then same idea, header text for the group direct registration form. So you can customize that. Header text for individual request for information, and then the header text for the individual direct registration form. So you'd be able to customize each individual form as you wish if you wanted to do that. And then we have group questions. So it's going to work the same way as like family and camper questions in the camper module. It'll be asked one time, regardless of how long they're in your database. So questions that would be asked to groups when they create their account. So it's going to work the same way as creating any question within CampSite. The type, you can make it mandatory and active. And then we have individual questions that would be asked one time to individuals when they create their account. So you can make them different, you can make them the same, you can make them sort of any way, format that you wish to create these questions for them. And then we have automatic email responses. So this is going to be a little different than the camper side, because on the camper side, if you remember, we have a drop-down where you can choose from the saved emails that you wish to trigger and send once they fill out these forms. In events, there's not a way to do that. You'll be able to customize the actual text in the body of the email that they get when they fill out those forms directly here. So thank you for submitting your group request for information. And then same idea, individual request for information. So this will be the text that they actually see once they fill out and submit those forms when they create their account. And you can also include the event dashboard credentials in the confirmation email if you wanted to do so, just in case they needed that as a reference. But I believe it's defaulted to yes in your database. And so again, it's going to be the text they see on the email once they submit those 2 forms and they create their account. And then next we have events. So events is going to be very much like sessions in campers. So the term events is just basically where you would place your guests or groups when they sign up. So it works the same way. So I added one test or one event that you guys have, the family camp, which I'm assuming if you guys use events, this is probably going to be one of the events that you move over to this module. So I put family camp, so and this location. And if you decide to use this later, I can definitely help you move those specific events from your camper module to events once you decide on what you wanted to actually keep there and move over. So I can definitely help you out with that. But just to show you how I did it, I just clicked on add event, create a name, and unlike campers, you can actually set a time of when it starts and when it ends. And then a capacity and then a description here. So I wasn't sure if you guys had a start date and an end date for your family camp, so I just kind of kept it as a default time that it sets it to, but you can come back and you can change it. if you have a time specifically. And then you can add group capacities based on gender and age and stuff like that if you are only filtering it out to a specific number of gender or males or females or ages and things like that. And obviously you don't see grade because it's not really geared towards campers and youth and stuff like that. So you can add as many events as you want to. And then from there, once you've added your events, you would go into events transaction categories, which again works the same way as camper transactions, just a way for you to keep your financials in order when reporting. We just have things like event rate, package, and just a generic rate category, but you can add as many categories as you want, and you would be able to tie these into the different transactions that you apply within events. And then we have the registration discounts. So again, works the same way as enrollment discounts in campers, except that it's going to be towards registration in events. You can apply them to groups. So it would be to whoever registers as a group, and then to those who register as an individual. Something to keep in mind, if you remember in the camper module, you're able to add automatic discounts to be automatically triggered if they meet a criteria, but in events, the only discounts we have available would be manual discounts that you would have to apply manually. So there's no sort of automatic discounts at this moment in events. So one of the differences there between the two. You can add them here. And then we have the registration form set up. So this is basically where you can manage your registration form, where they would pick their events and things like that and make their selections. First, we have general options here, which is going to be just a few settings. The first setting would be whether you want to show the spaces remaining on the group registration form. Same idea with the individual registration form. So if you have a capacity for your different events, do you want them to be able to see how many spots are left when they make that choice? So if you would like to, you can switch this on to yes, but I think it's, right now it's just defaulted to no. So pretty straightforward with that. And then we have group instructions and terms, which is going to be just like your, do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. On the registration discount, just previously, the way that I just want to make sure I'm understanding what the page looked like. Can you click back to, yeah, perfect. So I'm guessing all of our registrations would just be populated here, and then Lisa or whoever would go in here and manually add a discount after the fact. Is that what you're saying?
They would add it. You can add it upon enrollment or registration. Sorry. So when you register the guest or the group, you'd be able to apply those discounts manually. Yep. Yeah, no problem. And then we have registration form set up, which is again going to be where you can manage your registration form. I went over this. So group instructions and terms. So basically header text. It's going to be similar to like your enrollment form setup, except in this case, it's going to apply to your actual registration form for your events in this particular module. So we have group registration options header text. So what they see right above the options they have available to register for, and then the group attendees. So if they're signing up as a group, there's a page where they can choose what attendees will actually be attending with them. What do you want to be above that page? Group questions, you can customize that, group payment information, stuff like that. So maybe you can mimic, I don't know, like the payment information header text from your camper module. If it happens to be the same person handling it, you can mimic that information there if you wanted to do so. And then group terms and conditions, stuff like that. And then lastly, the message to display after the group registration form is successfully submitted. So just a generic sort of thank you there that they will receive. And then if I go back to the top here, same idea. If a individual decides to register on their own, it's just going to be their header text and what they'll see. So if you wanted to make it differently, you wanted to make it the same, it's really up to you. And then we have group email responses. So if I haven't mentioned already, I don't know if I did, but if you remember camper, in the camper module, you're able to turn on automatic enrollment processing mode, which means that they'll automatically be enrolled if they meet the criteria, restrictions, stuff like that. So there's not a manual or automatic processing mode in events. There's only manual processing mode. So you'd have to run through the registrations as they come in and then register them as they individually. Okay, so this would be the message that groups would receive once you have registered that particular group to an event. So here is the body of that email. So there's not a sort of drop down where you'd be able to select a saved email in this case. I'm just letting them know that their request received. I think I said something about it being the email that they receive once you confirm the enrollment. What I meant to say was this is actually the email they would get once they submit their registration form, rather. So once they submit that registration form, this is the message that they receive. Same idea with the individual email responses. So the message that they'll receive once they submit that registration form and submit their request. Okay. And then you would save your changes. And that's step 5. And then lastly, we have registration options, which is going to work almost the same way as like step 9 in Camper. The Camper module, this is where you'd be able to tie everything together. So you can tie in the events, things like that, all into one selection that guests or groups would be able to select from. So I created the family camp and registration option here. So this is what they would see. They can select it if they wish. If you needed to remove or change my description, you could just double click to edit. Same idea with the name if you need to edit that. And then you can add additional enrollment options or registration options if you need to by just clicking on that button on the very top. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on these 3 dots here just to dive into the differences here. So the first thing you're going to see once you double click on those 3 dots for your registration options is going to be general options. So these 2 settings, open for group registration and open for individual registration, is basically turning them off. If you only want groups to register for this event, you would just keep this set to yes and turn it off for registration. So if you want it for both group and individuals, you would just keep these both set to yes. So I believe you mentioned that there's a lot of scenarios in terms of registration, all types of people. So I just kept them both set to yes here for both group and individual. And then we have allow responses to group attendee questions to be edited after submissions. So any questions that they answer for groups and attendees, do you want them to be able to edit it? You can leave that set to yes if you wanted to do so. But again, if it's set to yes, users won't get notified if they happen to change their responses after the fact. It's just something to keep in mind with that setting. And then max attendees per group. So if you allow for group registrations, is there a max amount of attendees per group? You can set that if you wanted to. And then you would save your changes. And then we have bundles again here. So bundles is where you'd be able to add your different choices within a registration option. Again, this is where you'd be able to tie in the event to your registration option here. So if you just wanted one event you'd want to associate to an option, you would just generally create one bundle for that one event. Like I did here, I just created one bundle. And then from here, I can double click on these 3 dots next to that particular bundle, and I can start building that particular bundle. So group rate, how much I want to charge the groups when they register for that event. So I can choose between per group or per person if I wanted to charge per person in a group. I just did it per group. Since you guys are going to be taking payments outside of CampSite, so you're going to be doing donations this year, I just kept it as a 0 base group amount here. But for your other events that you do charge for, you'd be able to set the rate here either per group or per attendee. Okay. And then you can also add or create additional criteria for that particular rate. So basically, this allows for CampSite to determine a rate based on a specific set criteria. So for like per group, I could do something like a tiered criteria. So for example, it'll be something like a group of 1 to 10. The first 1 through 10 people, the rate would be $50, and or for a group of 11 to 15 people, it could be $60. So that's typically how the tiered criteria works. A bulk discount, if a certain number of people sign up, age tiered. You can set a criteria if you wanted to. But I just kept it blank for now. And then we have group deposit and installments. So if you require a deposit from groups when they register for this event, you can set it here. I just kept it all blank. And then you can also require a mandatory auto pay here. So something to keep in mind is that if you have any events that you require payment in full upfront, you'd want to require a deposit and make the deposit set to 100% if you require deposit or full payment for the event upfront. So just keep that in mind. So unlike payment schedules in campers, we have what we call installments that you could actually create for each event. So you can break it down by a certain percentage and a specific date. So you can do maybe 2 dates and half of it's due one date and half of it's due another date. You can create those installments. So the only time you'd be able to actually create an installment is as long as you don't have anyone that actually selected that option. So since I've been running a few test registrations, I'm not actually able to create any installments here just because I have a test family that selected this option already. But if no family has or group hasn't done it before, you'd be able to edit it just by clicking on that installments button, just to give you a visual of what it would look like. And then we have individual rates. So it's going to be the same thing. How much do you want to charge for individuals when they sign up? You'd assign a category. You can also add a criteria, which in this case, there's only one option, so age. And then an individual deposit and installment. Okay, so this is a good example. So since no one selected that individual or this option as an individual, I can actually click on that and I can add the installments. And then I can associate a percentage and then I can add as many as I need. And then I would be able to run my installment invoices later on that date or before that date through the financial tab. So I'll go over that later on. And then you would save your changes here. And then you can also make it active or inactive pretty easily. And then you can also copy over this bundle. So if you have a similar bundle and you don't want to have to recreate everything in there, maybe make subtle changes to that bundle, you can clone it here by just double clicking on this sort of orange icon on the very left of that bundle. And then you would save your changes. Any questions about the bundles? I know it's a little bit different than the camper one.
Lisa, I know we're on a donation-based registration right now, but do you have any insight for how it was, like the rates were before, like when we do change back to a fee-based registration? Do you see this working well for that type of, like, those criteria that we have options with?
I think so. Like, if I remember correctly, and this is stretching because it's been over 10 years since we've been doing donation-based. Mm-hmm. We did have individual rates and then family rates. So,
okay.
I think that we can set this up to work however, we decide it'll work. And I expect that we're going to still have some form of a subsidy option as well. So
right.
My thought is that, I'm assuming this fall we're going to have a lot of discussion about what this is going to look like. And then I think as we have that discussion, we can see how we can implement it here.
Okay. Because I knew some people were talking about charging for, maybe I heard this wrong, but maybe charging for a meal or something like that, which I'm guessing.
We have meal rates. So we have daily rates and then meal rates. So But those rates are what we have to pay to Hills of Peace. So when I do my paperwork for Steve, it's like, okay, I had this many adults who were here overnight. I had this many seniors, or no, I had this many adults who came for lunch on Monday. You know, it's literally broken down to that level of detail.
Okay. Sounds good. Just wanted to double check.
Yep.
Cool. Anything else any other questions you guys had before I move forward?
Well, I guess. Sorry. I do have one more question on the criteria here. I think I just maybe need you to if you could go through those different types of criteria types again, and just
yeah.
I think I understand the tiered, but just make sure that I understand all of them. That'd be great.
Yeah. So, of course. Yeah. So we have the tiered. Basically, if you have a rate that you wanted to apply for, like maybe for example, like the first 1 through 10 people would be a rate of $50. Maybe for a group of 11 to 15 people, you charge more, maybe $70 or $60. So it's going to be based on the amount of people within a group. So if you wanted to do that, so there's examples for each criteria type underneath each one in case you maybe forget. It's going to be tiered based on the number of attendees. And then you would add that criteria, max count, minimum count, max count, and then you would add the amount. So that's if you wanted to do that. And then we have the bulk discount, which is going to be like if it's going to be a charge per a number of 10 attendees are coming. For example, like if you have 10 attendees, you could have it be $50 per person. If they have 20 attendees for their group, it'll be $40. So the more for every attendee, as it increases, you could change the rate there for the bulk discount. And then we have age, which is pretty straightforward. If they are within a certain age, or they're under a certain age, or over a certain age. A good example of this is like maybe a senior citizen discount. So if they're over the age of like 65, you can give them like $10 off, or you can change the rate if they happen to be under a certain age, you can do that. And then we have age tiered, which is a little bit more complicated. So this is this kind of ties in with the age and tiered criteria. So if it's something like, one second, I'm trying to like catch up on this one as well. So for age tiered, a good example is like for the first 10 people under $13, under 13, it's $15. So maybe the first 20 people under the age of like 25, it's going to be $60. So there's two criteria that intermingle here. So the age as well as the number of people attending. So not a lot of people use this criteria, but if you wanted to break it down by that criteria, you could do that through age tiered here. So there is an example again in each one if you wanted to kind of refresh yourself on that. Does that make sense? I know it's a little confusing.
I think especially on the age tiered, I was like, what?
Yeah, right. So it's intermingling two sort of criteria. Yeah. So that one took me a second to wrap my head around for sure. All right, so that's the different ones. If you decide to use it, it's there if you need it. All right, so any other questions before I move forward? No? Okay. So one thing I wanted to point out as well, which is another difference between campers and events, is that group leaders and individuals can only make payments in their account when an invoice is generated for them. So unlike campers where parents can make payments at any time, the only time they can actually make a payment is when an installment, an invoice installment has been generated for them. So typically, we recommend if you do wish to add installments, I would suggest either setting it up as automatic or auto pay installments. So you can run those auto pay for them and have them pay then, or you would generate the invoice right after you accept their registration. So that way they can make the payment anytime after they're actually accepted. So it's going to work a little bit differently in that aspect. And you would be able to generate those invoices in mass in the financial dashboard, which I'll show you later on. All right. And then I think I went over individual rate as well. So deposit, again, you can add installments. If you want to require full payment upfront, you would set the deposit to be required and set it to be 100% if you require payment in full upfront. Okay. So there are some minor differences with events and campers. So the next thing I'm actually going to go over is group questions, which are going to be questions that are going to be asked to anyone who registers as a group, and it's going to be asked per group. So I know there are a few questions, Lisa, that you provided to me about like preferred accommodation, things like that, cabin, number of days attending. So I added them, or I moved them all over to events. So that way they will be able to select and answer these questions here. But you can add as many group questions as you want for them to answer. Works the same way. Question, mandatory, active. And then we have permitted groups. Oops. So unlike campers, you can't restrict events by like grades and age, obviously. But you would be able to permit only certain groups if you have an event that's only available for certain groups within your database. So this is where you'd be able to do that. So maybe it's only available for like 20 groups. You would just select that group from your database, and only they would be the groups that would be able to make this selection when actually registering. And then we have group extras. So any extras you wish to offer groups in addition to registering. So maybe, as you mentioned, maybe meals. Maybe you want to offer like a dinner or lunch, something like that. You can offer it here, and you'll just add it and set the criteria or the parameters for those particular extras. And then group coupon codes works the same way as coupon codes would in campers. So if you wanted to create one for groups to be able to enter and receive a discount off registration, you can do that here. Works the same way. It's going to be up to 10 characters, lowercase and number in there somewhere. And then we have attendee questions. So that these would be questions that would be asked per attendee. So if I click on add attendee question here, it's going to have me enter that question. I'll choose a type. And then I would also be able to allow it for group attendees as well. So we have this setting here. If you want to allow for group attendees to also respond to this question, you can also have or set it so that only the group leader responds to it. But if it's set to yes, each individual attendee within that group would have to provide a response on their own dashboard. Otherwise, if you only want the group attendee to answer for them, you would have this set to yes. Okay. And then we can have it open for individual attendees as well to respond to. So if only you want it for individual attendees, you could switch off group attendees if you don't want them to answer it. Okay. So again, it's going to be per attendee. And then we have mandatory and active. So I was in the process of crossing over these group questions into the attendees questions as well. So I'll add those in later. And then we have attendee extras. So any extras you want to offer per attendee, you can add here. So they can add it on to their registration if they want to do that. And then you would see your changes. Oops, there's one more here. So individual coupon codes. That works the same way as group coupon codes, except that it'll be a coupon code that you would be able to distribute to individuals. So when they register as an individual, as opposed to a group, they could receive a discount off the registration rate if you have one.
So for on the coupon, if you click on that, yeah, exactly. I know that's expiration date, but is there a way to say this coupon code is only good for 10 uses, and so like, obviously the first 10 people to use it would use it up, or is it just by expiration date?
It's going to be only expiration date for right now, but that is something that a lot of camps have brought to our attention as a potential update for coupon codes. So it's limitless right now, but in terms of days, but you can add an expiration date. So that's the only sort of restriction we have for coupon codes as of right now.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So another thing I wanted to bring up here, once you've added your registration options and things like that, you probably noticed that in events, there's not a enrollment tag feature. So I think I went over that a little bit, how you'd be able to create like a nav bar on like the dashboard for the camper module, the parent dashboard, and they can filter it out based on like the province, like west and like east, and they would only see those options that are tied to that particular tag. So in events, there's not a feature like that actually created in events, so they would see all the events when they register. So maybe something to consider. I don't know if that's a breaker for you guys, but there's not a enrollment tag feature where you'd be able to tag each feature and create that sort of quote unquote nav bar for the events dashboard. So, but that being said, our goal is to eventually mirror all the functionality in the camper module to the events module. So that's definitely a goal of ours as we continue on through. All right, so that's how you'd be able to build those registration options. So now I'm going to go over, do you have a question? You wanted to go
so
over?
I have a question in response to that about the tags. What does that actually look like? Is it just alphabetized, or is it force ordered by the date of the actual session? How does that look when it's just kind of ordered out?
Yeah, it's a visual of what it would look like. So let's see, on the right side, when they go into their enrollment form, so this is I'm going off of the camper enrollment form, what it actually looks like for the enrollment form. So what it's going to look like is that when the parent goes into that form, on the right side on the enrollment options page, there's going to be this nav bar, and they're going to see the different categories. So what I did in the camper one is I created a category called province, I believe. And then I created two tags in that category. So I think it was west and then east, and they saw that province category on the top, and then they see two tags underneath it, so east and west. And it's going to have a little checkbox right next to it, so next to east and west, and then the parent can go in, they'll see that category, and they can select either east or west, that little checkbox, and then it'll filter it out based on the options that are associated to that particular tag only. So that's kind of a visual of what it would look like. So just the category and then any tags below it, and then they can select and cherry pick what tags within each category that they want to see options for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Sorry, Lisa. So on the parent side, or I guess on the registrant side, on the events module, since we can't tag out the event sessions, how did, I don't know if I'm asking this correctly, but like when you get to the actual offerings page where you can see all the different things you can register for, and since we can't tag it out and you would just see every single event across Canada, is it alphabetized, or is it like, would you start seeing, like, you can
reorder it if you need to.
We can actually control the order that the end user sees?
Yep. So
okay.
I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's going to be actually set in the order that which you created. So sorry if I misinterpreted your question, but yeah. So yeah.
I guess if we can just create some sort of naming system to where, like we're doing right now, CWM : whatever, or CEM : whatever, and we could just do it maybe alphabetically or whatever, and then it would just each one would go that way, and it'd be easy to find. That's just a thought.
Yeah, that's a good idea. As you can see here, I don't really have like other registration options to really demonstrate this really well, but I can click on that icon to the left, those three dots, or those 3 lines, and I can rearrange them. So I can do that for you once you like decide on what you wanted to move over into events. I can just do that here. But since I only have West Coast anyways, or West Province programs, they're all going to be kind of grouped together anyways. Mm-hmm. But once you get those East Province programs in here, I believe they're just going to end up at the bottom because it's placed based on the when they were created. So then, since those are created after, they'll most likely end up on the bottom of all of your West programs. But if not, for any reason it doesn't do that, you can just drag and drop.
And if you click name or description, like, does it sort by anything, or do you have to manually do it? Like the actual name?
Oh, like the header. I've never actually tried that.
Just curious. You don't have to find out right now, but that would be helpful. If we just could do it that way, that'd be helpful too.
I think so. I don't want to give you a direct answer right now, but maybe play around with it once you have it. But other than that, I mean, you can rearrange it based on that icon right here. But that is a good idea. You can have it grouped off, or have maybe like the West on the top and the East on the bottom, since there's no actual enrollment tag feature created in events. But yeah, again, we're hopefully trying to get this mirrored over, all those features from campers into events hopefully soon. So in the works.
Michelle, I have, Parker, if you're done with your questions, I have another one.
Yeah, shoot. Or okay. I'll wait for Parker if he's not done.
I'm all done.
Okay.
So let's say I want to set up another event where most of the questions that I ask in Family Camp are going to be the same. Is there a way to copy the Family Camp to copy all of that data to a new event rather than having to retype it all?
Oh, like clone questions into another option or event? Not this time, no. But if you need help with that, Lisa, let me know and I can help you out with it, since we don't necessarily have a sort of copy or clone function for questions right now. But yeah, if you wanted help with that, I can definitely do that, since we don't have a feature specifically to do that right now.
Okay. So does that mean that every year I'm going to have to retype all of the questions for family?
Oh, okay. So you mean rolling over from year to year?
No, that's the second question. No. I need to add in an adult reunion, and it's at Hills of Peace, and most of the questions are going to be the same. So
I see.
So my first question is there a way for me to just copy the Family Camp to, so like Family Camp 2, and then just rename it to the camp that I want it to be? But then also, your second question, what you just mentioned, which is, rolling over Family Camp from this year to next year, because the chances are 98% of the questions are all going to be the same.
Right. So to answer that second question about rolling over, you can do that. That's where the rollover wizard comes in. You can make your selections based on your previous year and what information and what registration options, what enrollment options you want to actually copy over to your next to your next year. So you definitely roll these over if they happen to be the same. But in terms of like copying over questions or copying over an enrollment option, like duplicating it, there's not a way to do that right now. You can duplicate bundles within the same registration option, but there's not like a way to kind of duplicate an enrollment option, if that's what you're asking. Does that answer your question? I wasn't sure if you were referring to copying over those options.
Okay. Now I'm feeling a little confused. If I copy or clone a bundle, what all is that copying?
So if I clone this Family Camp bundle, it's going to create the same bundle within that same registration option. So we have this here because some camps have like the same like deposits and same individual rates, things like that they wanted to keep for another bundle. So they'll just go in and make any subtle changes to it instead of having to completely redo it. They could just make subtle changes here and there to that particular bundle. So that's generally the scenario in which you would use like the copy bundle or clone bundle function in events. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So if you didn't have any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the admin side, which is the last thing I'm going to go over, in addition to like the event, the group and guest profiles. So just to go over your admin settings, I'm going to go up to events at the admin at the very top of the page. So versus campers, I'm going to go to events here. And then I'm going to go to events dashboard. So this is where you'd be able to edit the dashboard and what the guests and groups see when they log in. So again, it's just going to be the homepage message. It could be like, this is going to be where you'd be able to sign up for events, pictures. You can add info, group registration page header text above that page, above the options there, above the registration page for the individuals. And then you can choose to show there are file links on the events page. So if you guys choose to not use a requester information form for events as well, I know you guys aren't using it for the requester information for campers. You can switch it off here. If you just want to show just the direct registration forms for events, you would set this to yes. So I'm just going to set this to yes for now. So do you guys know off chance if you're going to use the requester information for events as well, or if you're not going to use it?
I may not, but Canada East probably will. I don't know. Okay,
I'll just have this set to yes for now so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to give you the link so you can actually dive into events instead this time around. Yeah. Sorry, Parker, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say, I don't know that it'll really, I think it's fine to, it's not going to hurt anything, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. If they do it, and then we just kind of end up doing it by default because they want to do it. So. Right.
Okay. I mean, you can turn it on for now, and then if you decide later on that you don't like the way it's working, you can turn it off. And then you would save your changes, and then below that we have let's see, financial payment method. So this is going to be separate from campers. So you can choose what payment method you wish to accept. So since you guys are still working with CSI, you don't have any options here. But once you do, you can choose what payment method you want to accept for groups and individuals that are registering for your events. And then financial settings, if you wanted to apply cancellation fee, if you happen to unregister a group or individual, that's set here. And then would you like to show the events that they're actually registered for on the invoices and statements? So just two settings here. And then we have the group registration contract, which is a contract that you can send out once you accept the registration. So you can choose the order of which you want this to be presented, group info, attendee info, terms and conditions. This icon here will allow you to rearrange it. Just customize the order. And you can also double click on the active button and switch it over if you don't want to include that information in your group contract. And then we have individual registration contracts. So it's going to be for individuals who register. You'd be able to send this off when you accept their registration. You can maneuver it around, and you can make this information active or inactive. Okay. All right, what do we have here? So we also have, let's see, housing management. So if you remember in the camper module, we have like the bunking boards where you'd be able to group your campers into different bunks and groups. In events, we have what we call housing, housing boards. So the general idea with the housing board is if you have like a housing situation where you house your families and house your guests, you can create different buildings. So maybe cabin 1, cabin 2, room 1, room 2, something like that. You can add those buildings here. And then you'll be able to add a group capacity, things like that once you'd add that building. So just to give you a visual of what you would do with these buildings once they're created. If I go up to events here, and I go down to housing boards, it's going to give, or it's going to allow me to house per event. And then I can add my different buildings. I don't have any actual buildings created, but once I have them added, I can choose what buildings I want to start housing for that particular event. And then once I start getting people registered, so family and guests, I can start maneuvering them around depending on where I want to house or group these guests or families. So it works the same way as bunking boards for the most part, but it's just going to be more geared to like housing situations with your different guests and groups. I go back to admin at the very top of the page, and then I go to events here. I'm going to go to saved emails. Oopsies. Saved emails is going to be the same idea as in campers. You'd be able to create those template saved emails, and then you can add categories and create new ones. So this would be applied to both groups and individuals, so you can send it to both, so groups and to individuals if you need to. So this is where you would create like your registration confirmation emails, things like that, so the emails that they would receive once you've actually registered them. Okay. So this is going to work the same way as your saved emails and campers. And then I'm going to go over how you would register your guests and groups. So in campers, we had the enrollment request queue. In events, we're going to have the registration request queue. So I'm going to actually go into that. I don't have anything here since I don't have any requests that were sent out. But once you start getting those requests, it's going to work the same way as campers. You're just going to literally run through each request as they come in, view any questions that they answered, view the options, view any extras they may have added, and then you would hit register, and they would be registered for that particular event. So it works the same way as the camper request queue. Again, it's just to review them and then register them manually. And you have the different tabs that you can view. So it works the same way. So now I'm going to go over the calendar. So calendar, you can view what events are going on in a particular month. You can kind of scroll through and see what's going on. And then we have advanced reports. So like in campers, we have advanced reports. In that module, we have group advanced reports as well as guest reports that you can pull up. So you can report on just groups, or you could report on all your guests if you wanted to do so. And that's
Michelle,
report.
Michelle, can you tell me again, what is the difference between a group and a guest?
So groups are just people who registered as a unit sort of thing. So a guest can actually be involved in different groups. So guests would just be the people that are actually attending, and then groups are just units that they can be a part of if they wish to register as a unit if they wanted to. So guests would just be everybody who's attending for the most part. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, so groups are just like groups that they could be a part of, that they can actually register as a unit versus individually. So guests would just be everyone in this case. So when I refer to like groups and individuals, that's referring to like how they're essentially registering. So if they wanted to register as a group, that guest would be a part of that group when registering. And if they register as an individual, they're going to be registering just on their own. But in terms of just guests, that's just a term that would refer to just everybody who's attending in your events, regardless of if they're registering as an individual or a group. So yeah, if you need any more clarification on that, let me know, and I can walk you through it a little bit more. It might make a little bit more sense once I get into the profiles and stuff like that, which is a good segue right now that would lead me to go over like the group profiles. So I'm actually going to show you what they look like on a group level and an individual guest level. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like with some examples. I'm going to go into my demo database, and I'm going to search for a family or a group here. I can search for a group, so I'm going to search for the Beck family. So this is what the group profile is going to look like. So in this case, it's going to show just basic information, which is all double-click to edit if I wanted to do that. And then I can see the group leader. So the group leader is in charge of making any payments to any events, as well as they're the only individuals that can actually register a group to an event. So Charles Beck is technically part of the Beck family group, but he's still considered a guest since he will be attending, or he most likely will be attending events that are set in your database. So even though he is in a group. Okay. So if I click on group here, I'm going to see the group members within that family group here. So these are all going to be individual guests here. Okay. So if I wanted to add a group member, I could. So again, groups can be, or guests can be a part of multiple groups if they wanted to be a part of them. And then you would just type in the existing guest name if there's an existing guest, or they can add a new one, right? And you can assign them as group leader if you wanted to. So multiple guests within a group could be the group leader. So you can have 2 group leaders, you can have 3. You would just double click on that star. So a yellow star would indicate who the group leaders are within that group. So only admin at this time are able to actually assign a group leader. They wouldn't be able to do that off the dashboard. So by default, whoever creates the group using the forms, they would be by default the group leader, quote unquote. And then they can reach out to your camp if they wanted to change it. Maybe Charles doesn't want to be group leader anymore. You can change it to another group leader if you wanted to. Okay. You would see the gender and age, and then financial, which is going to house all the group financial information. So if they registered as a group, you would see all the financial information, charges, discounts, payments that were made for this group, forms, and then the yearly tab, which would pull up all the yearly information. So any registration requests for events that they've submitted will be here. And then you can view any other year. Notes, files, and history is going to work the same way, as well as quick notes. Okay. And then the action menu here, you can generate an email, documents, register them on the back end, unregister them, and you can also delete this group. So I would ignore this. I don't think you have this on your database, but this is referring to a different module we have, just in case you're wondering what this create package for 2018 was. So that's referring to a different module that we have. So that's the family profile if they created one. And then if I go to group members, if I wanted to view the individual guest profile, I would just simply click on the name of that guest. So a guest can actually register individually if they wanted to as well. Even if they're part of a group, if they wanted to register individually on their own, they do have the opportunity to do that for your events if you opened up those events to individuals. So on this page, you can edit the gender, all this information, email address, things like that. And then you can see what groups they're a part of. So Charles is part of the Beck group or the Beck family group. You can also add them to a group if you wanted to as well. You can make them the group leader. And then financial information. So any financial information that is associated to any individual registrations for this guest will be here. Invoices, credit cards, checking account information is going to work the same way. Any individual registration requests that Charles has submitted on his own would be here. Emails, notes, history files, things like that. And you can literally drag and drop files straight from your desktop here if you needed to do so. So that's the individual guest or the guest profile as opposed to the group profile. So that pretty much wraps up events for the most part. Are you still unclear about the difference between a guest and a group, Lisa? I can go over that a little bit more if you wanted to.
I don't have an answer for you. I think okay. I just need to. I really learned more when I'm spending my time in here creating, like doing registrations and then logging in as an looking. That I really learned quite a bit with that.
Yeah, it's all about experience. Yeah, and actually like executing it in the database. So maybe run through it today, and if you have any questions as you're like exploring and playing around with events, if you have some time, yeah, let me know and I can go a bit further on anything you're unclear about here. So I'll send you both the links to events. Like I mentioned, they're completely different links that you would need to use to create accounts within events. So I'll send those over to you, and then you can play around with it and let me know what you guys think. I'll let you guys debrief. I don't know if you guys made a decision on whether you're going to use events or not. But if you are, let me know, and then I can help you migrate any information from campers to events later on.
Okay.
Yeah, Lisa and I are going to talk later after lunch, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, touch base with me.
I do have a question about the database side. So I understand on the camper module, you create an actual person and you give their date of birth, grade, whatever, and then that person stays in the database and ages as time goes on in the database. In this events module, so backing up, so in the camper module, the benefit of that is that then once you've entered it, it's entered, and you just then select what sessions are available for that age group or grade bracket or whatever. The events module, let's say Charles Beck registers as a group this year, but next year registers as an individual. Is it maintained in the system year over year, or are they having to re-enter everything year over year? How does that tend to work, or is it just per event that happens? Does that make sense?
So yeah. So the information is going to be kept in the database for as long as no one deletes them and things like that. It's going to be stored within their profile. So if they registered as a group or with a group, in X year, and then they register the next year as an individual, that would be stored in the respective profile. So all that information would be kept. If that's your concern here. So like in groups, it would have all that registration information still kept in the yearly tab. So all this information doesn't really necessarily need to be re-entered. Are you referring to like information, or are you referring to like registration information, just so I'm clear?
Well, I guess, so if I'm understanding correctly, so we have the group leader, who, let's say I'm registering my family, I'm registering everybody for under my name. But then next year, let's say my partner decides to register the family, and he's not using my login credentials, but he already has he's already been entered by me the previous year.
In your group. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he would still be in that group, but in order for him to make any sort of enrollment or request towards an event, he would need to be made the group leader, which can't be done on the profile or on the dashboard, the events dashboard, but it can be done administratively. So if maybe your partner calls and your camp and it's like, I'm going to be in charge of registering my family this year. Would I be able to do that on my end? So what you could do is that as an admin or a camp or the camp who's handling this would come to the group. So hypothetically, it's the Beck family. Let's say Stephanie was in charge, and then Darren wanted to be in charge of registering for the next year. You can just double click on the star, and then now Darren has full access to make any event registration request on his end. So if he wanted to do it. So this would be all stored in the system. So guests, group members. Yes, all this stuff is stored. You won't have to re-add any guests, do this information again over again. So it's going to work the same way as campers, where all this information would be stored for the next year moving forward.
Okay, and one last question. Just so let's say I'm registering with my partner and 2 other people. At the time of registration, if I'm the group leader, did you say that I could also, at the time of registration, make him a group leader as well, or am I only allowed to self-select myself as group leader, and then it would administratively have to be done on the back end to add more?
It would have to be administratively done on the back end. I need to double check on that, but from my knowledge, it's going to be by default whoever creates the group when they fill out either the request for information or the direct registration form. That person who fills it out would be automatically assigned as a group leader. Yeah, but I may be wrong. But I'll give you those links and you can play around with it and see, because I don't remember off the top of my head. But from my understanding, it's just by default that person who filled out the form.
Cool. I can do some test runs.
Okay, yeah, I'll get you those links, and you can do some test runs. You have one event in there that I created, the family one, so I can even submit a request, submit a registration request, accept it, and play around with it to see how the workflow goes. Cool.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lisa, I know you
Any
have to
other
go.
questions?
Sorry I asked so many questions.
No,
you're fine.
We're fine for time, so it's okay, Parker. Yeah,
Okay.
Michelle, if you can send us that. If you can send us that link.
I'll do it right after our call.
Then Parker and I can possibly, when we have our meeting when I get back. Then we can take a look at it and figure out what we're going to do.
Move forward with. Okay. Well, I'm here beside you the whole step of the way. So if you need any help, let me know. If you need me to migrate anything over, I can definitely help you out with that.
Yeah, well, I would definitely, I think, send us the link and we'll go from there. I think that, I know personally, I'm leaning toward migrating the family camp over, but we'll have, hands-on will give us a better idea.
Right. Yeah, definitely experience is the best way to learn in terms of this database. A lot of moving parts.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and also record or convert this training. And I'm still, for some reason, I'm still having difficulties with that phase 1, Parker. I'm sorry, but I'll try and get that worked out for you. But I'll convert this. I'll send it over to you, and then I'll get you those links right after our call.
Excellent. Do I have all the other ones too? I can't remember.
I don't know, but I can just send you all of them if that works, just in case.
Yeah, just do that, I think, this time, because I know I have some of them already uploaded, but I need to make sure what I have, and that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, definitely. All right, guys, if you don't have any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and you can reach me if you have any other questions.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, have a great rest of your day, guys.
You too.
Thanks.